On. Hello, everybody. It is your host. I am back from the dead, better than ever, despite a loss last week. Your boy KG82 Live. I'm here with always with my co-host Zach Earlbeck. Zach, you held down the fort last week after I had to mourn the loss of not one but two players on my squad. So congratulations, you did a hell of a job running solo. But it's good to get the gang back together, man. What do you say?
I could not agree more. I tell you what, that solo, it was an interesting deal. I much prefer going duo. I like the duo setup much better. So it's good to see you back, KG for TN. How'd the week off do? Are we feeling refreshed? I know, like you said, you lost, but are we feeling all right? Are we feeling refreshed?
We're feeling refreshed. I mean, we'll talk about my matchups a little bit later, and it's obviously some key matchups, but it's tough times for the bald brawlers. But I always got to remember, I've never missed the playoffs in the history of the Yarski. So no matter how terrible my team is doing, I'm guaranteed one of those six spots. So everyone else can fight for all the other shit, and I'm still, as of right now, tied for the bye, despite me and Bill having the same record. So it's onward and upwards, but I know we lost last weekend, so I'll touch base briefly on it. Two of the matchups that we wanted to highlight. The first one I had my matchup with Pooty, and I think that matchup was the absolute clinic example of why you don't stay content with your team week to week because of Pooty's trade. So the trade ended up getting him Mixon and Allen, which ended up winning him the week, and now Pooty's just a game back in the playoffs. So kudos to him, and obviously you were the recipient of that trade. So what were your general thoughts on the matchup?
I thought the same thing. Number one, if Pooty doesn't make that trade, he's 3-6, and it's a whole different season than it is 4-5. That swing, that trade, could prove to be crucial down the stretch. The other thing was we were watching, and Pooty has this year gotten boned a few times, and I thought for sure it was going to happen again. Peterson looks like an absolute. He looks terrible all game, and then all of a sudden they get down to the end zone, and he rams his way in there. Pooty goes down by a few, like 1 or 2 points. I go, God damn, Pooty, they're gonna do it to you again. But we got the Cup Stafford stack that comes in late in garbage time and saves the day. So I thought you were going to get away with one, and Pooty was going to get boned for what he probably feels like would be the 100th time this year. So
it was one of the tough ones because that last drive, like I actually was going to start Pollard, but on the drive home, I was like in shambles, still dealing with the wake of King Henry. So I actually talked to Katie. I'm like, Katie, I can't make this RB2 decision, Pollard or Adrian Peterson. And I described them both like, Kirby, you got to go with the Titans. So who knows? When I'm in doubt, maybe I'll be referring to the fiance a few more times. She keeps picking me up winners. But yeah, that dang stack of Stafford and Cup is amazing. He messaged me earlier, like, son of a bitch, if I lose because Herbert goes off on the bench, it's tough because he's got two great quarterbacks and he's playing the matchups, but it stinks when you see someone on your bench go off for 30 and there's only so much you can do.
Yeah, I mean, you know what they say about having two quarterbacks, you almost have none, because that's Pooty constantly going back and forth, doesn't quite know what to do. Made the wrong decision last week, but it didn't cost him. That's what's important. So, yeah, definitely a fun one to watch, a fun one not to be involved in. I will say that. So
I know, and last week was just an ugly week all around in terms of football. So many underdogs won, and just the points were not very high in general. But the other big matchup that we kind of want to touch base, your game of the week, it ended up coming down to that very last drive between Roscoe and Bill Tino. What do you have to say?
yeah, not a lot of points, right? But definitely tight, which is what the game of the week is, right? It's supposed to be that good game. I said it was going to come down to Monday night. I didn't realize it was going to come down to basically the Steelers' last possession. Uh, so Najee scored early, like first drive, I think. I was like, okay, Ross is done. That's, that at least puts him out of his misery early. Well, he kept checking it. It's like, oh God, is Najee going to get enough? Is Najee going to get enough? And then he gets down to that last drive and he caught a few of those dump offs because Big Ben's washed and snuck out of there by 0.25, I think, 0.26. And the interesting thing about that was the only natty win on the week. So we were 0.26 away from another Bush Light sweep on back-to-back weeks. So a big win for Built. yeah, despite the few points, definitely love watching those matches that come down to Monday night. That's just high quality stuff. I don't know if Ross was watching, but I know Bill was sweating fucking bullets out there.
Really did come down to the wire, and Najee was his horse, and like you said, the early touchdown really did give him the early advantage. But in the end, I mean, he got a win with McCaffrey finally coming back, and even didn't get in the end zone with 12 points. So Bill's team could be formidable in the future with McCaffrey and Harris are seemingly two of the top 5 backs. So it'll be interesting to see what kind of arises from the rest of that situation and kind of go from there. But with that in mind, you kind of referenced it. The Bush has had the Natty's numbered the past 2 weeks, 9-1 overall, and it's created a huge logjam in the division. So with that, I think we might as well jump into your power rankings because that's kind of where we're all leaving it right now and what we're all going to do. So let's see if I can get sharing the stuff and we'll jump in. Got to share screen 3. Beautiful. Okay, so I know I wasn't here last weekend, so we can either let me know how you want to roll through it, and we'll get going, man.
Yeah, we'll just go week 10, and then we can compare from the prior week. So I don't think there's really any questions about who's gonna be in that 10 spot. Our board Jared, what is there to say? The question really is what would be happening if Ross hadn't dropped that one in week 6. I guess we'll never know. Jared got 1 win, but he looks, I think, locked in for the Sackle playoffs. So I believe based on his 8 wins, he's mathematically eliminated. So Jared, another year down in the bottom. So that's where we got 10. Number 9. Last week it was Sap, and there's not going to be any change this week. We've got our boy Sapper. Oh, how the mighty have fallen. I think we looked back. He was starting to get a little love there. I know week 8 we had him up in the playoffs, you can see there. So
see if I can pull it up quick.
Yeah, I mean he was started out. That's okay, don't worry about it. He started out real hot early, I think, and then since then he's gone to 4 L's in a row. He's just dropped a 66 pointer. And he's averaged 81 points over the last 4 games. That's just straight up not going to get it done. He went from high up in the rankings now to basically battling for his playoff life at the bottom of the logjam. So, got to wonder how Sap's keeping that locker room together. After last year's Sacco and then 4 L's in a row, got to worry about the boys over at the Capistrano Castle. So, at number 8, I've got Schultes. He's been a hard one to rank. I don't necessarily hate his team. He went 3 weeks ago, dropped 166 points against Pooty. I thought, boy, that might be Schultes turning the corner. But he's gone back-to-back weeks of 79 points. Now they're starting to hear whispers of Kamara not playing, D-Hop not 100%. So it makes it tough. When everybody is so tight, we're splitting hairs. Obviously, that hurt where we've got Schultes in the rankings. And then that last one, right on the outside looking in, I've got Axeman. Not quite, just on the outside looking in. Blows the absolute doors off of Sap last week for his 4th win in a row, which there's nothing to say other than that's impressive. So good for Axe. Now, I looked at his schedule down the stretch. So he goes, me, Ross, Villantino, Pooty, and Ludd. Now, as you notice, those are all names that have not been mentioned yet. So those are 5 of the top 6 teams in the upper or in my basically what I'm calling playoff teams in my power rankings this week. So the stretch is going to be very tough, and if he makes the playoffs, you got to tip the cap. But he's going to have to earn it down the stretch. So, Curb, what say ye on the bottom 4? Anything you would do any differently?
I mean, you hit the nail on the head for Jared. I mean, if he didn't get a win earlier in the year with Ross, we pretty much wouldn't be talking about him. But he got his. That's the only way. If he was 0-9, we'd talk about him week in and week out. But right now, he really should be shooting for week 16 and 17, trying to make the best possible team. Sap. So I couldn't pull it up on the sheet, but I do recall he was number 2 in the rankings in the week 6 power rankings because he was 4-1, and since then has lost 4 straight. And so, how the mighty have fallen there. Schultes, I agree with him in the 8 spot. He's got a good team, but the 2 injuries you referenced, and Mike Williams happens to be the biggest boomer bust guy. He has had a knee issue where he's not truly 100%. And so he's either scoring 25 points for his team or 4 points for his team. So, and Axe is always just a tough one because that's where the logjam, I think, really starts to hit for a lot of these good teams. Love his running backs. And we'll just have to see what these rest of the ways go. But his one cross divisional matchup against Built is one of the harder ones, I think. So I think Built's either the strongest, I think is the strongest team in our division. And so I could foresee that being a peg in his hole that brings him down compared to some of the other squads.
Yep. So we'll keep rolling here. Now the teams that I've got have sneaking just in the playoffs. Curb, I've got you at 6. Now we've gone from the 1 to the 4 to the 6. So we're on that red downward trend arrow here. Lost 3 in a row. Team is in shambles. Those are your words, not mine. And but I've got you above the line. Like you said, you've never missed the playoff. So maybe this is me, maybe blurring my vision based on the past, but I have faith in your abilities to fix the snide and stay above that black line and make the playoffs for again another year. So I've got you at 6. I've got Pooty at 4 and 5 at the 5 hole. So again, like we talked about, I thought he was going to get boned and he was going to be 3 and 6, which would be a totally different story. But Pooty turned the corner here, I think. The Cup Stafford stack we talked about. I think that trade might have just been what it took to sort of get him to turn the corner, which is good because I was sticking my neck out. He had a losing record, but all these points, I still kept putting him up in the power rankings, putting him up in the power rankings. So again, for a guy that I've been sticking my neck out, it's good to see him turn the corner. And then at the 4 slot, I've got Ross. Last week, our number one spot. Seems like a big drop for 1 week, which I don't like to do. I don't like to make people fall that far unless something's drastic. But you combine the loss and the 85-point game, that's sort of where the chips fell this week. So, Curb, anything different in the middle 3?
No, I think these middle 3, I guess I haven't looked at Luddy's team to kind of, and don't recall it good enough to kind of give it a point of reference against some of the other squads. But like you said, my team's kind of in shambles. The RB2 spot and flex position, I'm struggling now that I lost Michael Thomas and Derrick Henry. So I think having me squeak in is pretty fair. Pooty, I think week in and week out, he has the most points of the whole entire league. So I think it's justified. If I recall correctly, I think he has one of the easier cross-divisional matchups in the Natty division. I believe he has either Shane or Jared. So having him in the 9 or 10 spot that you're playing cross division for the last 5 weeks gives him an advantage. And with Ross, I think he's improved his running back depth with Cordero Patterson, who just produces week in and week out. So I think he's a good team. It's just seeing week in and week out how these teams go for a variance. They're all just clumped so close together. So we'll kind of just go from there.
Yeah, splitting hairs. I definitely agree. Things, we keep moving on and thinking, oh, maybe some of this logjam will get sorted out. Well, it just keeps getting more jams, which is excellent. Fun to watch. So you talked about Luddy's team. I got him at the 3 slot. He is 6 and 3. And to be honest with you, I love his team. Eckler, James Conner, now that Edmonds is out, Tyreek, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson with no Claypool. So I think, I like Luddy's starters. His bench is sort of decimated with injuries. He should get Russell Wilson back this week, I think. So I actually tend to like Luddy's team, and I think that's kind of telling in the way I've got him ranked at the 3 slot. Now, ahead of him, I've got somebody who has a worse record at Tino. Tino 5 and 4, but I think, like you said, he's got elite running backs now. Najee Harris reminds me of when I had Saquon Barkley his rookie year with the corpse of Eli Manning, where Eli didn't know how to do anything but just dump it off, and he would just rack up those cheap reception points and yardage. So you add a Christian McCaffrey back who should go back to his old self. I know they're talking about adding Cam, which I think won't hurt, I don't think. So I've got built at the 2 slot with that running back 1-2 punch. Plus, he's got solid receivers that have, in my opinion, outperformed what we thought was going to happen. And that leaves
You finally did it, fuckers. You finally did it.
At the top of the mountain. I got an ugly win last week against Schultes. But I do have the tiebreaker against Luddy. I've got the head-to-head victory over Tino. So I've got myself at the top of the mountain. Kirby, what do you think about the top 3?
Yeah, as we were kind of diving into Luddy's team, I actually like his team a lot, and so I actually think the number 3 ranking is perfectly justified. He's got the 3 stalled receivers with Tyreek Hill, Marquise Brown, and Deontay, and Chris Carson's potentially coming back this week, but he doesn't need him. He still can wait another week or 2 while Eckler and Connor carries him. And what's big for his team that's struggled in weeks past is the quarterback position, how he's been rotating, and now Russell Wilson's coming back to pair with Tyler Lockett. So if something were to happen to one of his receivers, maybe even start Tyler Lockett if the connection back with him is strong. So really like Luddy's team in the 3 spot. Bilt's team we kind of already touched on. We like his running backs a lot there, and I'm lucky enough to have the head-to-head advantage with him currently, which gets me at the tie, but we still play one more week at the very end of the year. I believe it's the same week that Jonathan Taylor is on a bye, so that's going to be really tough for my squad. But overall, 2 slot I think is justified, and right now I think your team is the number 1. You may have pulled a big move last week to get Dalvin, which obviously last week it didn't prove being better, but if you would ask everyone who would you want, Mixon or Dalvin rest of the year, I think most people would choose Dalvin. And you had the wide receiver depth to be able to take advantage of Pootie's injuries last week. So Pootie had a number of guys injured, James Robinson, Devontae Parker, Calvin Ridley went on the IR and needed a win. You saw that opportunity to trade away some of your depth and a good running back for a great running back. So having your team at the 1 spot is clear. And yeah, that's week 10, baby, but there's still a whole long ways to go. I know Dalvin's got potential legal issues coming in with all that stuff. So who the hell knows? A lot can change in 1 week. Exhibit A, my squad. So we'll just see how it goes, baby.
So this is breaking news on the show. It says former Browns wide receiver Odell Beckham is finalizing a deal with the Rams. Any interest in Odell at the Rams? And does that affect Cooper Kupp? Does it affect Robert Woods? Does it affect Darrell Henderson?
That is very interesting. So you're going to get my 100% unbiased opinion. I'm just intrigued on, does this cut into the pie of Cooper Kupp at all? Because really, I don't think it should. The question is, Cooper Kupp excels because he usually runs those routes in the middle of the field. He goes across the field and is just so good after the catch at getting separation. Odell traditionally excelled when he was at his best with the Giants was when he was running slants across the middle of the field. He could run outside, but his primary ability was in the middle. So the Rams obviously like to throw it. I think I'll just be very intrigued to see how this works out, because I would think he takes the role of Van Jefferson, so the 3-headed monster of OBJ, Woods, and Kupp. But I don't know how it's going to impact. What is your thoughts on it?
Yeah, I wouldn't think, it's hard. My first pause is I don't know how good Odell is anymore. I would still think he's elite. They just weren't using him in Cleveland, but I don't know. He looked pretty washed. He didn't do anything in Cleveland anyway. So, and I wouldn't think that, that OBJ could get signed off the street and then that would, mess up right now what is the best quarterback receiver duo with Stafford and Kupp, right? Real quick. So I don't see it truly affecting many people. I don't think anybody I think Ross had Van Jefferson last week, but I think he dropped him already. So I don't truly see it affecting anyone, and I don't know quite what Axe is going to get with OBJ. I know he held on to him, so I don't know if he turns into a usable wide receiver 3 or not, but I don't know. Could be interesting. So
it's a very interesting wild card for Axman's team, because obviously Stafford's playing like an MVP level this year, and he just for whatever reason hasn't looked the way of Robert Woods too often. So if OBJ can absorb some of that target share, maybe he does become a good player. But right now, actually, team doesn't necessarily need him, but it's a good lottery ticket to have, and he's moving to a better offense, which is always good.
Right. Yeah. I mean, everybody's always going to think of Odell making those crazy catches back in New York when he was an elite receiver. So, I mean, like you said, it doesn't hurt Axe to hold on to that lottery ticket and pray that he becomes. I mean, if people were picking up who's the guy that signed with the Chiefs, Josh Gordon. I mean, OBJ's a better lottery ticket than he is, I think. So, yeah, I just thought I'd break that on the show, see what your thoughts were. So.
Yeah, that's very interesting. But you know what? We got the power rankings, and we haven't done the Fantasy Pros comparison to kind of see how those two numbers kind of add up next to each other. So this, as a reminder, is just your rest of season ranking. So right now they have your team at number one and Bilt's team as number two. So they're right in line there. I was surprised to see that they had my team at number four and Buddy's team at number five. So I don't know if they're still taking into account Russell Wilson still being injured. That would be my initial guess, but I was a little surprised to have my team above Kyler's. And then outside of that, the bottom two, I think, but look at those scores. That doesn't look too good. So that's one pro of being, I guess, in the Natty division is, I mean, hopefully we can get 2 wins against those teams the rest of the year, but you never know. So outside of that, I think they had these two teams neck and neck, which you kind of had, and yeah, pretty close overall. I think the one questionable thing I had was just, do they have Russell Wilson healthy for Kyler's team rating? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, most of the time there's usually like one or two like way out of place from what we had, but truly things are pretty. I mean, maybe move one or two spots, but I mean the bottom four are the bottom four, the top six are the top six. You know, maybe reordered them a little bit, but yeah, I'm actually interested.
Look at you, Zach. You're getting better at this. Look at you. It took 10 weeks, but you finally did power rankings worth of shit.
Hey, better late than never.
Amen to that. So yeah, that's the interesting part with it. But no, outside of that, I really don't have too much. We want to just kind of dive into next week's episode and then we can wrap it up for the people, or what do you got?
Yeah, leave the fantasy pros up. We'll hop into. I think we both got a few matchups we want to highlight. So leave that up.
Yep.
I'll get started here. Division matchups are back. So the Busch Lights finally done sweeping the Natty. So we'll let you guys get a few wins here. So I thought about, what game am I going to make the game of the week? I thought about your matchup with Sap. We've got 3 game losing streaks and 4 game losing streaks on the line. Which one of you is going to stop that skid? But I went a different route. I went Pooty and Luddy, 2 good teams, both 2 game winning streaks. Pooty has been solid all year, scoring tons of points, but we just sort of touched on Luddy's team: Eckler, Connor, Tyreek, Marquise Brown, Deontay Johnson. Like you said, if we get Russell Wilson back. So I've been a big fan of Luddy's team, and my prediction is it's going to be a little too much for Pooty this week. I think Luddy would be the favorite going into this week. I don't know. What do you think? What's the Fantasy Pros saying here?
So yeah, right now they have Kyler's team at the number 3 spot of the week and Pooty at 5. And one of the things that works in Pooty's detriment, I guess, with the trade last week is now he's got to deal with his number 1 RB Mixon being on bye this week. And James Robinson, though he's starting to be limited in practice, not a for sure 100% go this week. And so even if he does play, is he getting a full workload? Otherwise, Pooty's backup is to run both Denver running backs, which will be a little interesting, having 2 running backs on one squad. So I think that's definitely a very interesting matchup, and what's going to come of that. As of right now, he's rolling with big old Herbs over Matt Stafford. So we'll kind of see how it goes. I think this is a very interesting matchup, and another one where Pooty's trying to scrape out a win, because right now he's 1 game out of the playoffs, and there's that log jam right there where if he can get a win this week, he's probably tied for a playoff spot next week with having the most points scored. He's probably getting some good tiebreakers out of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Like I said, Pooty's in the thick of it. I mean, he's had some tough breaks. I think he's still got, let me check quick. I've got my notes here. Golfing with Woods, still the most points against. So had some tough breaks. But yeah, he's definitely in the thick of it and has a tough matchup with Luddy this week, who is sitting pretty good at 5-3 right now. So, or no,
6-3.
excuse me. Sitting 6-3. So Luddy's sitting pretty good. We'll see if he takes the foot off the brake. But I think that one's going to be marquee. I believe they've got some Monday night action. Let me see if I can pull that up. It might be another one of those that we get to watch Monday night come down to the wire here. Let me double check. Yeah, because I think the Rams play Monday and Pootie's got. Yeah, so we're going to get to see Cooper Kupp Monday night. I don't think. And Luddy's got Marquise Brown and Jasicki going tonight. So we'll get an early start on Luddy's team, and we'll get Cooper Kupp, who is a good one to have going Monday night because he can always blow up. So
he's good from Millie. That's for damn. And I guess a little bit of premise, like obviously we always put the YarskCap first in terms of fantasy leagues, but one other league I do have Cooper Kupp. Ended up, so I was playing against him in our league, with him for another league in a close one. Ended up winning that league by one, like a point, and losing to Pootie by 5. So at least I found a way to split the whole thing.
So it cost you one win and gave you another win that last second drive.
I know, and I would have been very upset if Stafford didn't throw to Kupp the last drive and threw that touchdown to lose it for me, and Kupp didn't get me the win. But that last drive did at least get me a win in one other league. So I wasn't the most upset in the world, and the Titans looked great. So who the hell saw that game coming in a general scope?
They did look great because I had money on the Rams, so I didn't see it coming. So, all right, Curb, what game did you have highlighted here?
I have, and you know what? I talked earlier about my matchup being the highlighted matchup of last week, and you kind of touched base on it. Me and Sap, since week 5, have gone a combined 1-7. I'm fairly sure. And we are now playing this week. And so it is currently, with my team not having a kicker, has me at a score of 89 and Sap at 91. But once I get a kicker, I feel like we're going to be pretty close to those weekly scores and how we're going to look. But tonight's a huge night for my team. I need to get a win. As of right now, Sap also has a tiebreaker against me where he beat me in the first head-to-head. So if we happen to be the last team tied for a playoff spot, it doesn't matter that I've scored more points. If we don't have other people in that as well, I'm going to lose out. So tonight's a big night for me with Lamar Jackson, Jalen Waddle, and Mark Andrews all playing. So a lot of people think it's an ugly Thursday night game. I'm going to be watching intently, but I'm scared. It's going to be an interesting matchup. No idea who we're start for the RB2, and DJ Moore sucked ever since I traded for him. And Sap's team, it's I'm not necessarily think I'm going to get killed, but it's going to be close. That's for sure. He has some horses, but Jordan Howard is a question mark. Devontae Smith is a question mark. Landry. It's just we both have we're both struggling. Let's just leave it at that. And yeah, what are your general thoughts on that matchup real quick?
Yeah, you're giving them a little bulletin board material here. You got to be careful. Like you said, tonight's huge for you, Jalen Waddle, and then obviously the Lamar Jackson, Mark Andrews stack. So yeah, it's going to be interesting. He's going to get Devontae Adams with a pissed off Aaron Rodgers. So I think, something's got to give, right? Like you said, we've got a 4-game losing streak and a 3-game losing streak. Something's got to give. And it is going to be very important when we look back at the end of the year, because like you said, you guys are right in the middle of that log jam. So those head-to-head matchups become uber important when it comes to tiebreakers. So yeah, that one's going to be a fun one. I agree with you. It's going to be awesome.
It'll be good. But you know what? That's what we're doing right now. We're pretty much coming into separation week with these division matchups coming in, playing head-to-head. We only have 2 teams with 6 wins on the year, and only 1 team with less than 4 wins on the year. Thank you, Jared. But yeah, it's going to be fun to see what the next few weeks happen, if we're going to keep this log jam going or if people are going to start to separate. So with that in mind, man, do you have any last words for the people?
No, basically like what you're saying. 2 games separate number 1 from number 9. So it's like, talk about an absolute logjam. That's, I mean, the chaos is the best part. I remember when we would get to that last week and it's like, okay, because I asked Bilt if we're into, Bilt's always the guy for me who looks at the situations and the schedule. He goes scouting on the schedule to see, okay, if this guy does this and this guy does this. He says we're still a few weeks out, but things are going to get tight down the stretch here. So it's going to be a lot of fun to see who stays above that black line and who's on the outside looking in.
It's going to be a fun one, but the one thing we can always guarantee, as always in history, Kirby will not be in the Sacco. So with that, we will wrap it up for the good people. Always good to be back with my co-host. We always remember King Henry. If it wasn't for him, my team would still be kicking ass. But until then,
and Mostert. Don't forget about Mostert.
I'm not even going to justify that with a response. With that, we are signing off.
Peace.